EDClass Limited. Breaking barriers to learning.
Hello and welcome back to EDClass's podcast. It's been some time, hasn't it? But what a better way to kick things back off with behaviour and educational specialist, speaker and author Adele Bates. In this episode, we're going to be discussing positive behaviour reinforcement and transforming behaviour and attendance challenges by re-engaging learners. So Adele, thank you for joining me today. So first off, just talk to me about what you do and what's your experience in the education sector.
So thank you very much for having me on. My name is Adele Bates and I'm a behaviour and education specialist, international keynote speaker and author of Miss I Don't Give a Engaging with Challenging Behaviour in Schools. And what I do is work across mainstream and alternative provisions. I've been teaching for over 20 years and I now work in a way that I support school staff to work with young people with behaviour needs. So whether that's looking at entire school practice or a particular group of pupils or a particular issue. Recently, actually, I've just finished a project with a special school for communication and intervention needs. And we have been working on their whole new behaviour framework as they went onto a new site. They tripled their pupils. So I'm using those kind of longer term projects as well. And I tend to travel up and down the country a lot. And also I have online support and resources as well. So lots going on.
No, yeah, it seems like you've got a vast amount of experience. I see on LinkedIn all the time, you're always doing this traveling and, it does seem like you're doing a really good work out there. So yeah, amazing that you're on with us today. Really appreciate it. So yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of behavior today, behavior focused. Talk to me about positive behavior reinforcement firstly, some of the challenges you might see within your work and what are some of the challenges that first you see when you go out and work?
The number one challenge is for staff to be able to see those positive things. And I would say, especially in AP, if you've got staff that are less experienced with the alternative provision type of behaviours and frequency of those behaviours that can come up when working with pupils with SEMH, social, emotional, mental health issues, or children with attachment issues, or children who've experienced extreme trauma, abuse, or neglect. If you have staff who are not used to that, they may struggle to see the positive things in the first place. And as a leader, you may struggle to see the positive of what your staff are doing. So I'm going to, with your permission, Tom, I'm going to do a quick experiment now for the listener. So if you're able to, if you're not driving, please put 2 feet on the floor. And I'll explain why about that in a second. And have your back straight and yet relaxed. So already, the reason we're getting you into that position, Tom's pulling a face. Oh, sit up straight, miss. The reason that we even just start in that is because we know biologically the body works best when the spine is straight, right? Because really, really simply, you can get oxygen to the brain, the blood can pump, etc., etc. Putting 2 feet on the floor sends the message neurologically to our brain that we are safe, grounded, we're okay, we're ready to work. So in the next 10 seconds, I would like you, Tom, you need to play along. You need to, I'm going to invite you to, have a look around the space that you're in, possibly a room, possibly outside. And I would like you in the next 10 seconds to count as many red things as you possibly can. Go.
Oh, wow. Maybe 1, 2, 3. There's loads of books to my right, so
Excellent.
about 5, 6.
Okay, and looking at me, I know we're on a podcast, but imagine you're looking at me, stop looking. And I would like you to show in your fingers or say out loud to the podcast, how many green things did you see? No, don't look again, Tom. Just tell me.
Green things I did not see.
Okay, and pause. Thank you so much for playing along, Tom. Nearly 99.9% of the time, apart from one person I did that with who was colourblind. The number of green things you see is less. Sometimes it's 0, right? The reason for that is because, as neuroscientists have now discovered, we will see what we think we are going to see. So because I told you to look for red, you saw loads of red things. I didn't tell you to look for green, so you didn't see them. Now, swap red for inverted commas bad behavior and swap green for inverted commas good behavior or positive behavior, right? What often happens, the way that our behavior systems are created within schools from a systemic level, is that there is a bigger focus on the negative behavior. There's the behavior point system, there's the C1, C2, C3, there's the exclusions and punishments and suspension, there's all this effort and energy and everything, and there might be some positive points occasionally, right? So what that means is whether you are a teaching assistant walking into your classroom or you are a school leader trying to support the, a staff briefing, we are neurologically programmed to look for the negative. And it makes complete sense because when you think when we were humans hundreds and hundreds of years ago, we needed to know about the negative to protect ourselves from it. But what it does in the classroom, coming back, circling back around to your question, Tom, what it does is we can often, if we're not careful, only see the negative behavior that's going on. And we will comment on it. And that will make it grow. Oh, come on, Tom, you forgot your blazer. Now, that's the first time Tom's actually arrived into lesson on time in 3 weeks. But the first thing I tell you is your blazer. How's Tom going to feel about it? That the first thing that's said to him is negative. If we're in a crew or an AP, sometimes he'll tell me where to go or he will walk out the classroom, right? So in terms of how do we encourage and improve and increase positive behavior, the first thing we've got to do is consciously look for it. And I really say this as well from a leadership point of view, when it comes to feeling overwhelmed and stressed. I work with a lot of school leaders, especially in AP, who are very, very, very good at finding the positive with the kids, but really have a blind spot when it's about finding the positive with the staff. So I support a lot of senior leaders who are saying things to me like, none of the staff are on board, they just need to do this and they're not doing it. They keep calling me instead of dealing with the behavior themselves. And I stop and I say, and what has this member of staff done positively today? And they go, oh, So that is the first piece. Now I could go on to then what we do with it and things, but I think that stuff is more commonly known. The thank you for doing this, the praise, the phone calls home, the positive postcards, all those kind of strategies I think people talk about more and are used more. But for me, none of that works if we are not watching what our mind is doing in the very first instance. So if you, like Tom, did not see as many green things as you did red, start doing it in your classroom, start doing it with your staff, make yourself a tally. Start monitoring. How many negative pieces of behavior did I see in that lesson? How many positive did I see? How many did I comment on about the positive? What, as the adult in the space, where am I focusing everybody's attention? Am I focusing it on Tom's lack of blazer? Or am I focusing it on the 7 other children who've arrived on time with their blazer and with a pen? I mean, it could be one of those really good days. So as an adult, where am I focusing? Am I focusing on positive behavior and the learning, or am I actually choosing to spiral into the negative myself?
That's really good stuff. That's really insightful. I like the little game you did because I had no idea what was going on there.
He was such a cheat, folks at home. He was such a cheat. He was trying to look around for green things. I was like, no, Tom, it's supposed to come my eyes.
No, because in the office we have a lot of blue everywhere. But no, yeah, it was good. It was a good and insightful comment. In terms of because what I've had a few talks as well. In terms of it's finding what actually works for the student in terms of why they feel in this way. And we found by actually building rapport, meaningful relationships can actually improve their confidence in that aspect. So, what you're saying is amazing stuff there, really good stuff. In terms of what you said, loads of strategies. There's no one size fits all, but what would you say is the most fundamental reason or thing that needs to happen to improve that behavior aspect, do you think?
The human beings you're working with need to feel safe.
Mm.
And I say the human beings because it is the staff and the pupils. I find, I'm sure there's some stats on this, I don't know them, but in alternative provision, it does attract a lot of staff who also have difficult trauma within their lives. I would say percentage more than in mainstream. And I think that ensuring that the staff feel safe and the pupils feel safe is the number one. Because again, biologically, like neurologically, forget all the building relationships and everything else. That is coming. That's part of it. But as a human being, if we don't feel safe, our limbic stem, which is the back, I'm pointing, we're on a podcast, the back of your head at the bottom, where the neck kind of turns into the head, the limbic stem there will be on alert if we don't feel safe. Now, when we are on alert, you'll know this, we slip into fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn, right? And when we're in that, we lose the connection with the prefrontal cortex, which is at your third eye. So that's in between the eyebrows here. Now, this part of your brain is responsible for things like analyzing, rationalizing, imagining what it's like to be in somebody else's shoes, deciding if something is daft to do or not when you're climbing up the scaffolding. So if we don't feel safe, we cannot engage with the prefrontal cortex. And so the behavior you're going to get from pupils and occasionally staff will be from the limbic stem, which is going to be a fight behavior, a flight behavior, a freeze behavior, or a fawn behavior. Fawn being kind of appeasing. And I think of that specifically in things like grooming and gang kind of environments. So the number one thing really is to make a safe environment. And the challenge is for schools is that what looks and feels safe to me doesn't necessarily to you. So for one kid, having the door lock's really important because if they think they're going to be disturbed, that really scares them. They don't know what's going to come through the door. For another kid, having the door locked is the scariest thing in the world, maybe because something really bad happened to them with the locked door, right? So things like that, very physical things like that, and the relationships. So coming on to what you said, Tom, those positive relationships we cannot take for granted, especially in alternative provision, because a lot of the kids we're working with have not had safe, positive relationships. Some of them with children, some of them with adults who should have been their primary caregivers. Some of the kids we work with, they've had the kind of things we don't like to speak about happen to them before the age of 5, and we wonder why their behaviour is a little bit fruity. So it's that safety, and that comes in environment, it comes in relationships. But without that, again, no matter how many gold star sticker charts you have, if a human being does not feel safe, their behaviour will show you that in the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
100%, yeah. I mean, a lot of the students we have, pretty much 90%, I'd say. Perhaps a lot of them could have adverse child experiences, trauma, anxiety, a lot of mental health challenges. It's just being able to find what works for them and being able to show what you said is providing that safe environment for them so they can, thrive and reach their educational potential. Definitely.
A word I just want to bring in on that is regulation as well. And I think that alternative provisions in general tend to be better at it than mainstream, although mainstream are having to improve. And that's part of the work I do with mainstreams at the moment, is helping them understand things about, I'm not going to go into it now, but I can point you to a resource for it. Things like the window of tolerance. If you don't know about the window of tolerance, jump on my website. I've got a blog and a video about it. You can share it in a staff briefing. But it's a really, really simple model about how and why certain children can't regulate and what we can do about it to help them get back and ready into that space to be able to learn in the window of tolerance.
Oh, yeah, that sounds really good, to be fair. Definitely have to check that out, 100%. Just touching on, we'll go on to attendance now. Actually, we'll touch back first onto SEND requirements, especially looking at the specific needs of those challenges. What do you think needs to be embedded for those particular students, who've got those requirements such as autism, ADHD, that kind of stuff, do you think?
That is such an open question, Tom.
100%.
How many minutes are you giving me till next Tuesday?
Just to give you summarize, I know it's a bit of a broad
Yeah,
question, but
this is a big one, isn't it? Okay, so I think there's always a twofold thing, and I'll be completely honest, I work with this conundrum of the two sides myself all the time, and I don't always get it right. But what I'm aware of when you're working with young people with SEND, on one hand, you want to know about their needs and what they require so that they have an equitable approach and chance with your lesson as everybody else, right? So what is it that I need to provide? What is it that I need to scaffold? Or what barrier do I need to remove so that this kid can access the lesson in the same as their peers? So that's kind of one side of it. And I think another side, and I have to say I feel like this is increasing, is that I also, with my intention when I work with these children, I also leave enough space in my approach with them to meet them where they're at. And this goes down again a little bit to the experiment we just did.
Mhm.
If you tell me a kid is pupil premium or has had X abuse happen to them or has this adverse childhood experience in their lives, if you tell me all of those things, my brain already, because it's a clever brain, the way that our brains work, we are then filing everything we know about, let's say, a pupil premium kid, right? So my brain, through my lived experience, through my teaching experience, will go through its little boxes and go, okay, so what do I know about pupil premium kids? And it'll think of all the previous pupil premium kids that I can remember. And unconsciously, this is all happening on a subconscious level, I will then start projecting those opinions, behaviors, etc., onto that new kid with the SEND or pupil premium or whatever category it is. And equally, sometimes the pupils are doing it themselves. They are saying, for example, I've got autism, so you can't do this. I've got autism, so you can't do that. I've got autism. And they are identifying so much with the label that the label is becoming everything that they are. You'll notice pupils and parents and carers can sometimes jump in on this game, and you'll get parents. I mean, definitely those of you listening who are working in AP, you'll get those parents and carers who come in and say, "Well, but my kid's got fill in the blank, therefore you can't fill in the blank." And I
Mm.
think I've been working with an educational psychologist, brilliant one. Actually, you should interview her, LJ Dupery. And
Okay.
we were talking about this a lot. And she said that in her practice, this is increasing. This identification with the label, whatever it is actually getting in the way of it's limiting what the child can access in terms of education. And so it's those two sides. And as I said, I experiment with this as well because I want to know about the needs. I want to know about the history and I want to know how I can help. And I want to see who this human being is in front of me before you tell me they've got this, and this. But sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes you just get given that information and then you meet the kid. Sometimes you meet the kid, then you get the information and you wish you'd known the information before because you'd have approached it differently. So that's why I'm saying I don't think that I've got the magic answer for that yet. But what I have got is an awareness of both sides because I think that understanding increasingly how our brains work around this, the fact that the labels can be useful because they're a shorthand, but also our brain then puts people into boxes which aren't helpful. Then we have things like our unconscious bias. If we look at the Timpson review from 2019, there are certain types of kids who are more likely to be excluded. Black Caribbean boys or boys from Black Caribbean heritage are, I think it's 6 to 7 times more likely to be excluded.
All
Children
right.
with SEND are 10 times more likely to be excluded from mainstream. Children with mental health issues, children in care, Gypsy Roma traveller pupils. Now, these statistics come from our biases. We have a system. The education system is a bias system. It's an ableist system. And that's why those stats come out that we have these patterns of certain kids that are getting excluded from mainstream. So it's almost the same answer as your first question. It's just in a very, very different way, is that we need to know about the needs and we need to work with them and we need to support staff so they know how to support a young person with Asperger's. We know how to support a kid with communication needs, etc., etc., etc. We need all that. And we need to, again, watch where our own biases are coming in. Where are we only seeing the red? Can we see the green?
That's an amazing answer. Yeah, 100% agree. I think we just have to be careful about being that prejudicial. And as you said, going back to what you said, look at them as a human being, and that this child is a natural human being, and they've got thoughts, feelings, and finding actually what they need and what accommodates their needs. Going back to also about building parents' trust in line with the SEND
Mm,
AP improvement plan as well, getting those in and finding what they can do to provide a better solution, I think will be very good as well.
yeah.
Um, yeah, we'll just a couple more questions then for you for now. We'll just touch on attendance then, because attendance is a massive issue recently.
Mm.
It's slightly improving the statistics recently, but we still need to push on, don't we? So, what would you say is the best solution, do you think, to address the needs of these learners and get them to reintegrate or provide a better solution for them?
Interestingly, I just did a talk. I've got a behaviour um, lead mastermind, and this is for head teachers, deputy heads, people in kind of managerial positions. And we just did a session in that mastermind about internal truancy. I was chatting with Simon Currigan from Beacon Support, and there are some key, I mean, that was about an hour and a half long, so I'll try and summarize it. But there's some key things that came through. First of all, we need to find out why. There is no point trying to do some kind of attendance initiative if we don't find out why these young people aren't coming in. Because one kid is going to be not coming in because they're having anxiety issues, and another kid's not going to be coming in because actually they are the carer for their younger siblings, and they're taking their siblings to the primary school that's the other side of town, and then they've got to get 2 buses back, and by the time they've got etc etc. So it's like, unless you find out what's going on underneath, for those of you who've worked with me in trainings, I talk about the iceberg. If we only ever put any of our interventions, whether that's attendance or whatever it is, if we only ever focus on what we can see, the result, we're not going to get to the root of the problem. We're not going to get under the iceberg. We're not going to see what all the causes are. I can tell you what doesn't work: punishing parents and making them pay money.
Hmm.
As a governmental strategy, it is not working. We need to find out why. Again, if you just think of human beings, why is a human being not coming into a room? Well,
Mm.
usually they're scared. It's either what are they avoiding, or what are they running to? Those would be really fundamental questions. So if they're not coming into school, if they're not, or if it's internal truancy and they're not coming into class, what is it in class that they're trying to avoid? Or what is it outside of class or outside of school that they are running to? And that becomes the start of your answer. Oh, and the final
Def-
bit I'd do as well, is,
mhm.
I mean, maybe applies slightly more to mainstream, but in some bigger alternative provisions, it happens as well. Sometimes I've noticed senior leaders trying to make blanket decisions about attendance, right? We've got an issue with attendance. We're going to crack down on attendance. Often happens with uniform as well. And there's this kind of blanket approach. It doesn't work. Everyone just gets really annoyed. There's only 5 days a week you can have a detention. Like, it's just, you've got to get to the root of it. And if it means you get to the root of it with 3 pupils to start with, and that takes you a month, and then you deal with the next 3, and then you deal with the next 3, you are it's harder, there's a lot more legwork to it, but you will be improving the situation. Whereas a blanket kind of, let's just all be more disciplined, it's not going to work anyway, and everyone will get really annoyed.
No, definitely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, getting to the root cause of why they're feeling and why they're doing and why they're not attending is definitely what we should be doing. Yeah, punishing parents, I don't. They're going to be resentful when you do that, aren't they? So it's not going to be that progressive. So
And
yeah,
that,
100%.
that's without even going on to things like the economy crisis, the energy crisis, the fact that we've got a huge amount of families now in poverty situations since this government's been in place. So that's the social wider context as well. Punishing a parent or carer who's already on minimum wage, that is not enough to live on in certain parts of the country. That's not really a helpful strategy, in my opinion.
No, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Definitely not. Just one more final question for me then,
Yeah.
for you. Just like to ask your opinion on online learning, online alternative provision, what we do here at EDClass. How good do you think and transformative do you think it can be for students? Behavioural challenges, mental health challenges. Supporting them both academically and personally as well.
Mm. I'm going to be really, really super honest here. I'm a technophobe. I find um, technology and online learning for myself, I find it challenging. Now, what I've had to do is because I know that about myself, I know that that's one of my weaknesses. I have to make sure that I don't let that bias, my own bias against technology, get in the way of the potential of learning for young people. And I mean, I come from a theatre background, so I'm all about in person. And I think that the importance of schools being able to support humans being in another space with a human and not starting a war is actually quite a useful skill that some of the people in the world could do with right now. But that's I think I've come to a point where I know that that's my bias, and so what I do is I work with colleagues who are really comfortable in the online space, and sometimes I've had to lead classes and work with children, lots of children with SEMH online, and I can say there are benefits as well. I think it should be a combination, is my opinion at this stage. I'd be very happy, but I want to be clear. I'm very happy to have discussions with other people who are working in this world more as their specialism, because what I do see is there are chances where kids are learning where otherwise they wouldn't be learning at all. So that has got to be a positive. That's absolutely got to be positive. And I would add the and to it, which is I see a world right now, if we're talking about being world ready, especially our kids from APs, if we want our young people to be world ready, I believe that things like working with other people who are different from you, working with others for a shared goal. And when I say working, that could be within your family, that could be at a workplace, that could be running the country, whatever context. But supporting our young people to be able to work together without, and dealing with conflict and dealing with fewer resources, whether that be money or oil or just food in the family. Being able to negotiate those things, I think, still does need to happen, not online. So I would say I'm learning about that question you asked me, and I have seen the fruit in it, especially during the pandemic. I worked with lots of children online, lots from I was working in a special school, SEMH special school at the time. We went online. And I have to say, there was some very brilliant practice that went on once the staff had got our heads around the technology. And I think also the challenge is, let's be realistic here, schools are not the first place to have the latest technology. We have, like, we talk about all this, oh, this technology is going to be amazing, it's going to be amazing. And then you go into some schools and you can't work anything because there's a really strong firewall. So it's brilliant that the technology is there, but what tools are we actually really able to access? And how many of us have spent an IT lesson spending the first 47 minutes just getting the login passwords for all the kids? Yeah, great once you get there, but I have a fear of being too reliant on it for all of those reasons I've said, and I am still willing to be having that discussion and learn new things myself, because it's not my zone of genius.
No, yeah, definitely. I think it's just finding there's a lot of factors involved with online learning, and again, going back to what works for each individual case. Building, I think what we found is just building that confidence. We are trying to reintegrate them as much as possible, getting that social interaction. We found that the hybrid model is working a lot as well, getting them slowly, gradually reintegrating, incrementally, so they're not.
So how do you do that? Do you start with them mainly online and then kind of wean them?
Yeah, as I said, it depends on each individual case. So if
Yeah.
they prefer solely working online, then they can do that, and then we slowly, gradually build them into the
Mm.
mainstream class. But if they want to do that in their isolation rooms, they can do that as well, and then come in at flexible hours throughout the day. So it can work in multiple different ways, really. But yeah,
And I am really excited and happy that there are people like you who are more expert in that field. I'm probably more likely to be the teacher they come to when they come in, let's put it that way.
no, yeah, I've seen you doing a lot of good work when you go actually into the mainstream, directly helping the teachers. So yeah, really good work what you're doing. But yeah, Adele, you've been absolutely amazing today. Thank you very much for joining me and talking to me today. Where can people get some more help from you in terms of behavior or attendance, that kind of stuff?
Okay, so there's a couple of ways. Everything is on my website, so that's a good place to start, which is adelebateseducation.co.uk. And over there, you'll see things like my book, Miss I Don't Give a Shit, Engaging with Challenging Behaviour in Schools. That is another really good place to start, with lots more information, case studies, examples of what things we've been talking about today. And I'm also always super practical. So in the book and in all my trainings, I look at, okay, this theory is all well and good. What are you doing next lesson? And then what are you doing next week? And then what are you doing long term? So that could be a really useful way in. If you are wanting to work with me, I have 3 different packages of how you can get me into your school, have me supporting and training your staff, working with your pupils, depending on what it is you need. And then I did mention as well the Behaviour Lead Mastermind, which is a meetup once every half term with school leaders, middle management, that kind of area, who want that support with behaviour. Because I think what's great about this podcast, Tom, is that it's a chance for people to think outside of the day-to-day stuff that's in your face.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the Behaviour Lead Mastermind space is. Plus, it's the community of other leaders. One of the joys of my role is that I get to share practice. I work across England, Wales a lot, Ireland. I've got a head teacher in Scotland, and then I've done international research as well in Finland, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic. So I'm able to share all this practice. And I think that that space in particular is a great one to be able to get that support, new ideas, and the accountability that we often need as well. So there are lots of ways to work with me. If you've got a load of staff that need training, I've got lots of freebies on the website as well. So jump onto there. And if there's anything you need, you can contact me from there. You can also follow me on Twitter, which is Adele Bates Z, Adele Bates Z. If you've enjoyed this interview, tweet me, let me know. And then I'm on LinkedIn as Adele Bates.
Amazing. Very good stuff. So yeah, everyone go check out Adele. I think it's just about that, but what we're pushing is that collaborative approach. And obviously what we've done today is connect, trying to make a difference as well for these children. So yeah, it's been absolutely amazing today. So really appreciate it, Adele. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Bye-bye.
So thank you to Adele for taking the time to give her thoughts. If you found this interesting and would like to find an online alternative provision solution for some of your students for positive behaviour reinforcement, contact EDClass on 01909 568 338 or email mail@edclass.com. You can also subscribe to our YouTube and Spotify accounts for more upcoming webinars and podcasts.
EDClass Limited. Breaking barriers to learning.